When I turned 62, and even before I turned 62, I sat down and I started seriously running some major numbers and trying to figure out if I should file for Social Security at the age of 62. The first thing that had pushed me towards considering filing early at that time was my health. I was going through some considerable health issues. Coming out of COVID, I had spent 10 days in the hospital with COVID. It took me a long time, even after I got out of the hospital, probably another 6 months, to get to almost full recovery. and I just wasn't sure from a health standpoint how much life I had left in me. In fact, when I came out of the hospital, I was still on oxygen, and I was on a lot of oxygen for probably another 3 months after I came out of the hospital with COVID. And like I said, you just start having thoughts in your mind when something like that happens. You know, mortality becomes reality at that point. But I did start to feel better when I started to approach 62. Now, I did have some other health issues that came up last year as well, but I'm recovering from them also. So that's why I'm still waiting on it. But there are some things that really made me think, and still sometimes today make me think about filing earlier rather than later. Market protection was another thing that I wanted to really look at. If I retired early, I could start pulling money out of my Roth IRA. I don't have millions in there, but we have a good amount of money in my Roth IRA, and I could start pulling money out of that and wait to pull money from Social Security. But if the market turns and you're pulling money out of your investments like that, like my Roth IRA, then the money in those investments are going to start to decline much more rapidly because they're not earning, they're actually losing money. If the market's going up or if it's flat, well, then it's probably not going to hurt as much because you're only going to lose what you take out. But if it's going down, you could lose a lot more because every dollar becomes, well, less than $1 in that investment portfolio. And while that is a real argument for a lot of people, for me, it became less of an argument because I just decided I didn't want to pull money out of my Roth yet. We don't really need it to live on. As it stands right now, my wife and I both still work, so we have income coming in. I have multiple businesses, and she is a full-time teacher, so we have money coming in on a regular basis. And that makes us really look at what they call spousal coordination, and that's where you sit down with your spouse and you both look at when you can draw your retirement funds, when you can draw Social Security, and what makes the most sense. Now, looking at just Social Security, I would end up being the one that draws the most Social Security. But my wife, being a teacher, she's also paying into the para program or the state retirement program. So she will be able to draw that, and she will also be able to draw Social Security when she turns 62 as well. So going with the normal consideration of spousal coordination, if my wife was the same age as me, which she's not, she's a little younger, but if she was the same age as me, she would start drawing Social Security sooner, and then I would wait because then I would have more in Social Security if I waited until I was 67 or maybe even 70. That helps in a lot of ways because you get to bring in more money that way, but also the spousal benefit. So like if I died, my wife would get more money than if I was to retire early. So when we really look at it now, what we're really considering is the possibility of her retiring as a teacher here in a few years, and maybe I don't retire at the age of 67. That was my original hopes, was to retire when I was 67. but I can go to the max benefits till the age 70. So if we get the house paid off and all of our ducks in a row, if you will, and then she retires from being a teacher and starts drawing those para funds, then she will also be able to continue working somewhere else and continue to grow her Social Security, and we can use her money along with my incomes at that time and her para retirement to live off of, and we're both building our Social Security. So then when I do reach full retirement, she will be almost the age of being able to retire completely from Social Security, with Social Security too. So that would make more sense from a monetary standpoint. And then there's another thing that I did consider. I try not to get myself too worked up about it, but it's the trust fund headlines. And the trust fund, what I'm talking about is the Social Security Trust Fund. The Social Security trustees have projected that the trust fund is running low. In around 2033, they will be really low, and they may be forced to reduce the amount of benefits. So if you do the math and you think, well, if you retired at 62 or at 63 or 64 like I am right now, then at least I'm getting 100% of the benefit that's owed to me right now, but then it's going to decrease later, but I've got some of that up front. And I know that those headlines do tend to push some people to file early. And I kind of really dislike it because those headlines create a panic in a sense. But one thing that I know, I'm old enough to remember many times reading headlines and hearing news stories about Social Security going defunct, going bankrupt, running out of money, but Congress has never let it get to the point where they had to reduce benefits. And I kind of have to believe that they probably won't even in the future, but there is always that chance. And I learned a long time ago not to hedge my future on what the media tells me is going on in the world. And the reason we're going to probably go with another strategy, and I don't know, it's going to change. Everything's fluid when you start talking about retiring, but I don't really have a pension of my own. I have my Roth IRA that I put money in, but I don't have a pension like my wife has an actual, that's not really a pension, but it's the Public Employee Retirement Fund that they have there for teachers and all state employees there. And for a long time, if you had a public pension like para, you were not able to draw Social Security. Two rules, the Windfall Elimination provisions and the government pension offset, were rules that could shrink or completely wipe out the Social Security that somebody had that they could collect on. So in other words, if those were still in place, my wife would have to make a decision. Does she retire off of her para, her Social Security, or if I passed away, then she could take mine, but my Social Security, her spousal benefits off of that, but she wouldn't be able to take para. But that all changed. Congress repealed both of those rules, which means my wife can now draw her para pension in full when she's eligible for it and still collect Social Security on top of that. And that also includes spousal or survivor benefits off of my Social Security if something happens to me. And she's going to become eligible for that pension payment about the same time as if I was to file for Social Security at 67. So now we haven't made a firm decision yet, but when we look at it, that is a possibility that she retires as a teacher first, and again, she could go out and work another job that she'll be paying into Social Security on, and I will just continue to work, maybe more at a part-time basis, but not draw my Social Security until 70. So that's kind of where I am. I'd really like to know where you're at in the process. Are you coming up to retirement? Are you in retirement? Did you retire at 62, 63, 64? Are you thinking of retiring at 62? And you're going to wait until 65, 67, 70? I'd really like to know what your plans are or what you did, and you can share those in the comments down below. And if you would, please consider hitting that thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. That really helps the channel out a lot.